We've got a fun game for you today here on the podcast. Melissa's going completely blind into it, which makes me very, very happy. Plus, we're going to talk a little bit more about my conversation with Bill Mosiello. And at the end of the episode, you're going to be able to hear a full interview that I did with TCU women's basketball coach Mark Campbell. All that and more on this episode of Frogs Insider. Hello and welcome in to another episode of Frogs Insider, episode number 73. I am Jamie Plunkett. She is Melissa Triebwasser. Yeah, we are cruising on our way to 100 episodes of this new iteration of the podcast, Mel. It's been a blast so far.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun, and like the cool thing is it still feels like we're really just getting started with all the cool stuff that we're going to be able to do. So again, as always, we really appreciate all of the folks that listen to us. Tons of folks tuned in for our special Big 12 Media Days episode, which was really, really cool to see. Mm-hmm. Lots of you guys watched clips on social media, which was awesome. So yeah, we're excited to up our coverage here and to do more interviews and have more audio and video clips from TCU around TCU athletics. So lots of cool stuff on deck here for the fall.
Absolutely. I'm super pumped. We're going to have wall-to-wall coverage of everything TCU athletics for you here on the podcast. We've got some incredible content coming to the Instagram page, the TikTok channel, and of course on YouTube, where hopefully you're watching this episode right now. If you're not, listening to it somewhere where you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever else that may be. As we get rolling, we always love to recognize our wonderful partners up front. Thank you to Dave Campbell's Texas Football. We are officially a part of the Republican Football Network. So if you like listening to our podcast and want to hear what the rest of the network has to offer, you can search Republican Football Network wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll find not only our show, but a show for every D1 football program in the state of Texas. It's a really fun network. We're probably going to be giving you some updates as we go along here on the College Football 25
I was going to say
online
this is no longer,
Dynasty League
this
that
is no
we're
longer
all
a college football podcast. This is now a college football NCAA Dynasty bragging rights podcast network.
Do we want to tell people a little bit about that before we jump into everything?
I feel like we should.
So before we jump into that, though, obviously the show is presented by Hell's Half Acre, our wonderful merch sponsor out of Fort Worth. HellsHalfAcreSG.com is where you can go to get all of your game day apparel for whatever you need, whether it's a hoodie, a pullover, a polo, a hat. They've actually got the TCU rope hat, which I don't have on my desk right now. I'm so woefully unprepared. One of my favorite hats, the rope hat that they've got, is currently 25% off on the website. So you got to get over there.
Such a killer hat.
And snag one right now before that sale ends. Love our partners over at Hell's Half Acre SG.com. When you go to checkout, make sure that you let them know the Frogs Insider sent you. Melissa, we are in a 12-team online Dynasty League with the folks over at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, the Republican Football Network. I love the setup of this league. So, for those that don't know, it's a 12-team online Dynasty League, but we have limited ourselves to non-Power 4 teams from the AAC, the Sun Belt, and the MAC, I believe.
Yeah,
and
right.
So we had a draft. Melissa had a very favorable draft position.
Man, did things fall into place for me, too.
I had an unfavorable draft position, but still feel like I got out pretty good. So you drafted, I believe, third overall, and I was 11th out of the 12.
Yeah.
Turns out there's some depth, though, in the G5 when you're working with a 12-team league.
It is such a fun... Like the G5s, especially those conferences, are so much fun. And we picked those conferences because we wanted to make sure that there was some interstate competition, and we had to include some Texas schools because we are part of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. I reached out to some professionals in the industry. I talked to some experts. I went in wanting Memphis. I thought they'd be the number one overall pick because it's definitely that's probably the best team. It's certainly the best quarterback on the board there. But I figured they'd go early. What I didn't realize was I'm playing with a bunch of boys. And so you guys are 100% in it for the bid. So what was the first pick?
North Texas was the first
North
team
Texas.
off the board.
Chandler Morris is North Texas, fighting Mean Green.
They're going to put up numbers. They're going to put up numbers in this league.
In my TCU dynasty, my offline dynasty, I swapped out Long Island for North Texas because I thought that'd be a more fun game. I did not enjoy playing it, especially since defense in this game is completely and totally
so
impossible.
hard.
I hate it so much.
hard.
I hate it. I hate how old I feel playing this game. Like, I was pretty good at NCAA 14, like good enough, like respectable. No, I am going to get my rear end handed to me in this Dave Campbell's Dynasty Network, even with Memphis. And I almost feel like they like let me have Memphis. Like I almost just felt, like pitied before we even started.
Oh,
like
give
no.
Memphis to the girl.
Yeah, let's let the one female.
I don't believe that. There are probably a lot of online dynasty leagues and online matchups where misogyny runs rampant. I don't really feel like this group of people is the one where that's gonna be the case.
Probably not.
But hey,
also,
to be at the, I was gonna say, to be third in the order and to end up with Memphis is quite the coup for you. I was sitting there at 11th and I had gone through my head, okay, I'm not going to get Memphis. I'm not going to get Tulane. I'm not going to get, I thought Western Kentucky was going to be off the board. I thought
that would have been a good pick
South
too.
Florida was probably going to be off the board. Those teams both fell to me at 11.
I
was really looking, here's the team. The team that I was hoping would fall to me, I already had my whole game plan ready, was Rice. I wanted Rice to fall to me at 11, and I was just going to absolutely boots on the ground, pound the pavement, recruiting in Houston, hitting all of those kids with the proximity to home pitch. I was going to build a Rice powerhouse. And then Ish straight up scooped me one pick before me.
Yeah, that's brutal.
And
especially
took
when
Rice.
Rice is your goal.
I was so unbelievably mad that it happened. And so then I had to sit there and I was looking at Western Kentucky. I was looking at South Florida. I liked both of those options. I love the Western Kentucky offense, but in the back of my head too, I was thinking, I'm probably not going to stick with this team's playbook.
Yeah.
On either side of the ball. Dan Casey, for those of you who don't know, Coach Dan Casey created a custom playbook.
How?
Dan Casey.
But how do you upload it? I can't.
Well, I'm not telling you.
Installed.
I've got it installed. I'm not telling you how because that's called Game Day Advantage.
Excuse me. Anybody listening to the podcast that's figured out how to install Dan Casey's playbook on a PS5, please reach out to me. I will give you a cut of the non-existent winnings that we're playing for.
I love that. So Coach Dan Casey, you can follow him on Twitter. He's a wonderful, wonderful football follow if you want to become a smarter football fan. He also has a newsletter where he sends out one play every morning with a breakdown. It's a wonderful written piece. It's very easy to consume, even if you're not like a big football head. I love it. And so he created a 56 formation playbook in College Football 25 that you can download
Some of us
custom playbook.
Can download.
Some of us can download as a custom playbook.
And you figured out how to play with it in Dynasty too, huh?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
now I feel gender discriminated against. I'm just gonna put it out there.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be great. We're gonna have a blast. It's gonna be so much fun. So I ended up going with James Madison, and here's why. So
purple.
First of all, it's purple, but really, here was my thinking. We have a ton of Texas schools in this league. You got Rice, you got UTSA, you got El Paso. I believe Sam Houston was drafted at one point. You've got North Texas, right? So there's 5 right there. There was only one East Coast team taken before me, and that was Craven, who I believe took East Carolina. And I wanted, if I wasn't going to get my recruiting stomping grounds where I could just hit the proximity to home button over and over again, I wanted a little bit of freedom where there wasn't a lot of saturation in the market. And so I went with the school from Virginia, where I'm going to run into some recruiting battles with Craven probably in the Carolinas and Virginia area. But I wanted a region where I could just really dominate that kind of mid to high 3-star recruiting area and have just kind of the whole talent to myself.
Good strategy. It's a good strategy.
Between Western Kentucky, South Florida, and James Madison, I thought as a player with CPU recruiting involved as well, I, as the head coach of James Madison, would have a better recruiting advantage in the Tidewater region, also known as Virginia, rather than South Florida trying to compete with Florida State, Florida, Central Florida, all these other schools. So that was my reasoning with going with James Madison.
The really important question is, people listening to us talk about our NCAA 25 dynasties worse or better than people listening to you talk about your fantasy football team?
Because everybody. Have you been on the Horned Frog Blitz EA thread lately?
Yeah.
We were all sharing playbook tips today. Nobody can figure out how to play defense. That's one thing that I feel good about is
also,
I don't have a
nobody
clue
telling me how to upload the playbook, which I'm gonna let my subscription expire if someone doesn't help me out. I'm just saying.
Oh my
I'm
gosh!
gonna quit supporting Horned Frog Blitz.
Jeremy will probably text you. He's gonna listen. He's probably gonna text you tomorrow. It's fine.
We know who the real one is. We know who the real.
It's always been
JC.
It's always been
JC.
It's always been Clark. Okay.
Yes. So
that's enough. That's enough. EA College Football 25.
We will update every week that when we record on how things are going, because you guys are going to hear some really familiar names. I mean, we are playing with the Texas A&M blog guys. We're playing with the Baylor blog guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jay Arnold's a part of. So if you follow any of these people on Twitter, or you come across them on your timeline, you are going to be hearing so much about this. It's going to be a ton of fun, and we will do so much crap talking. And I am not going to be good at this, and I've just kind of accepted that, but I'm going to have a lot of fun talking a lot of crap and then losing.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be so much fun.
As it should be.
Okay, we're going to jump in though. Melissa, I have a game for us to play tonight. And I will fully admit that I stole this idea and concept completely ripped from Mina Kimes and her wonderful NFL podcast.
She's the best.
So she has been doing a podcast series that she calls, let me pull it up, Power Hour. And what she does during this Power Hour is she has a guest on her podcast and she has them rank all of the teams, do a kind of a power rankings of sort of all the teams in the NFL. And the way that she does this is she kind of has some general clusters of teams at certain points, and she will provide the guest with two options starting at the top, so starting at number 1, and that guest, or in this case you, will pick which of those teams you want to put at that slot. The other team will kind of go back into the pool of teams, and we'll just kind of continue that over and over again until you have power ranked all of the teams.
It's a little like blind rankings, but also not at all.
Right, so we're not just going to come out and say, oh yeah, we're just for the hell of it going to put Houston at number 1 or something. We're going to do this with a little bit of logic and reasoning.
Okay.
You were at both days of Big 12 Media Days. You heard from every head coach. You talked to a lot of players from different schools. So I thought if there was anybody that was equipped to do this exercise, it would be you. I'm also going to kind of give my commentary and rankings along the way as we go. And I'm also going to do something for the first time ever on the YouTube version of this. We're going to change the setup of our screen so that I can go back in and post and drop in our power rankings at each spot.
Okay,
So we'll be able to have our little chart. So for those of you that are on the YouTube channel watching, you'll be able to see this happen in real time, even though I'll have actually edited in all of this stuff after. We're going to start. I'm going to use the Big 12 Media preseason poll as kind of our clusters of teams that we're going to go with here. And then I'm also going to make a note of where we rank these teams so that when I go back, I have that readily available to me. My pad of paper is missing all of a sudden, so we're just going to write it on the back of this Spectrum bill. All right. Melissa, as we get started here, for the top spot in the Big 12, give me your choice between Utah and Kansas State.
I'm gonna go Utah.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Utah. I've said this to you multiple times, just watching Avery Johnson walk around Big 12 Media Days. It's just hard for me to believe that's the best quarterback in the Big 12. He just looks too happy and low key. So I think Cameron Rising stays healthy in Utah. Utah's the top team.
I'm gonna take Kansas State at this point.
Okay. I like it.
Because I hear what you're saying about Avery Johnson. I think he's
really good, though.
Really good.
Is.
And even though I think the offensive line maybe takes a little bit of a step back for Kansas State this season, Cooper Beebe's a Dallas Cowboy now, thank God. From a Cowboys fan over here. Thank God. He's probably going to be the only player on the roster come season. I trust Chris Kleiman to get the defense ready. I trust them to have an offense that's functional behind a quarterback who's very, very talented.
Yeah. Colin Klein is not coming through that door.
Colin Klein is at Texas A&M now, right? There are a lot of changes on the offensive side of the football, but I think the defense is still going to be really stout, and the offense will figure it out. And so I take Kansas State at that point. All right.
Okay.
So for you, Melissa, number 2, Kansas State or Oklahoma State?
Kansas State. I mean, I think for all the reasons you said, like the offensive line and the offensive coordinator concerns me the most. But I would still rather roll with a new offensive line than 47-year-old Alan Bowman, who I think the world of as a person. But I feel like they kind of caught lightning in a bottle last year, and we saw what happened the year after TCU did that. So I do think they are going to. I think they're in for a little bit of a matriculation backwards. Personally.
That's fair. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State over Utah here.
Okay. Wow.
And this is why I
Utah
say
disrespect.
that. It's not disrespect to Utah. I think they're going to be very good, and they're going to end up on my list here pretty quickly. But when you're talking about a team that was in the Big 12 title game a year ago, they returned 22 starters from that team. It's apparently get away with whatever you want time up in Stillwater because Ollie Gordon's not going to be suspended after his DUI. But I think when you have a talent like Ollie Gordon on one side of the football and you return as much veteran leadership as Oklahoma State does, that sets you up incredibly well, regardless of, what, the schedule looks like or what the offensive system or defensive system is or whatever kind of turnover you've had from a coaching perspective. Veteran talent matters. TCU fans know this because of 2022, right? When everything changed about the TCU football program and then they made the national championship. So I'm pretty high on Oklahoma State this year. I think they're going to be pretty good. And so I've got them at number 2 in the conference.
JB, let me just bring up another point here. Do you know when the last time a team not named Oklahoma or Nebraska made back-to-back Big 12 championship games?
Did it ever happen? Was it Texas?
It was Colorado in 2004 and 2005. So
go Buffs. Well, we're not going to be talking for Colorado for a minute in this exercise.
Yeah.
But.
So it has never happened in the previous new version of the Big 12, and it had not happened until Colorado did it as a member of the Big 12 20 years ago. So
that's interesting. And I mean, we heard at Media Days Brett Yormark talk about the depth of the league and the parity in the league, and touting that as a strength of the Big 12. And so, yes, you're absolutely right. That may come to fruition. That pick might bite me in the butt, but I'm buying Oklahoma State stock this year.
I also don't feel good about anything picking in the Big 12 this year.
Sure.
So I think this is all just I think we're all just kind of wishful thinking at this point because nobody knows anything about this conference. It is weird.
For sure. All right, for you, number 3 in the conference, you have Oklahoma State or Kansas.
See, this is where I really want to believe in Kansas. And I really want to believe that to me is who's more likely to play 12 regular season games, Jalen Daniels or Ollie Gordon, because that to me is the difference. I think the Kansas defense, if I remember correctly, is replacing quite a bit. They also lost their offensive coordinator. So I do think Oklahoma State is probably better than them. And it is just can a running quarterback stay healthy for the entirety of the season that now has back issues. So I'm going to go Oklahoma State, but I am a big believer in Kansas this year. I think that game at Arrowhead is going to be really, really tough for TCU. So I will go Oklahoma State, but I won't wait long to go Kansas.
This is where I'm putting Utah. I'm putting Utah at 3.
Wow. Okay.
I again think that Utah's a very good football team. And this isn't like a G5 to P5 adjustment period for them. I mean, we're talking about the back-to-back Pac-12 champs.
Yeah.
But Cam Rising's also a year away from getting his AARP card. He hasn't been healthy in 2 seasons. And I think that those question marks at quarterback really, really changed the tenor of what a team is able to accomplish in the Big 12. We've seen that irregardless of blue-bloodedness of program in the Big 12, you lose your starting quarterback, it's going to be really, really hard to win the conference.
Yeah.
And so I'll believe Cam Rising can stay healthy for the whole season when Cam Rising stays healthy for the whole season. All right, Melissa, for you at number 4, you've got Kansas or Arizona.
I love Nofita, and I'm not even going to try to say the name of their outstanding wide receiver. I think they are both so fun and so outstanding. Here's what I didn't realize. They're both incredibly small.
Mm-hmm.
Those are tiny human beings for big-time players. Now, I don't think that that's going to keep them from being a contender in the conference. But this is where they, again, lost so much. And as good as those two players could probably alone put up over 30 points, but I think that defense might give up 40. So I am going to go Kansas for all the reasons that I said in talking about Jalen Daniels. We've also seen Lance Leopold is able, now again, new offensive coordinator, but is able to pull together good quarterback play in unexpected places when necessary. So I think Kansas is for real. I think they're incredibly well coached, and therefore I think that they will be a top, what are we on, 4 or 5?
Mm-hmm.
A top 4 team in this conference. Yeah.
I agree, and I also have Kansas at this spot. I think that same thing with Cam Rising, I need to see Jalen Daniels stay healthy for a year. If Jalen Daniels stays healthy for a year, I would not be surprised if Kansas finishes higher than 4th in the Big 12. Sure. We also know that they've got some really good talent. Lance Leipold's building an actually competent roster up there in Lawrence, and they've been able to overcome, to an extent, the Jalen Daniels injuries the past couple of seasons. So really interested to see what that team bears out to be this year. Like you mentioned, they're not playing any home games in Lawrence this season, which will be a challenge, I think, for them. But hey, Arrowhead as a backup option is pretty dang cool.
It's pretty cool. It's going to be awesome. That's what I'm looking forward to being at.
Absolutely, same. Number 5 on this list, you've got Arizona and Iowa State.
Iowa State might be the biggest enigma in the Big 12 this year. That is a team that could win 10 games or be 5-7, and neither one of them would really surprise me. That's where I'm going to go Iowa State just because I think, if nothing else, that team will play incredibly hard and will play really solid defense. They do have some filthy guys on both sides of the ball. I think Abu Sama is going to be a really good running back. I think he's probably underappreciated and not being talked about enough. I think Matt Campbell is really good at not putting his young quarterbacks in bad positions. We saw how he kind of babied Brock Purdy, although I did throw the Brock Purdy interception in NCAA the other day, and I just sat there and laughed at myself for 5 minutes. I was like, oh my God, I just pulled the Brock Purdy interception. So I think Iowa State has a chance to be more consistent, while Arizona has a chance to be more explosive. And I'm going to take consistent in the more known quantity because of how much turnover Arizona had, even though they still have, who would not surprise me at all, the quarterback of the year in the conference.
I agree with you again, and I'm also going with Iowa State here at 5. I think I'm very excited to see the step forward potential of Rocco Becht in year 2 as the starter at quarterback. I admittedly was very down on Matt Campbell going into the start of last season. I was pretty critical of his lack of success against their biggest rival in Iowa. I was pretty critical of the fact that the only time he's made the Big 12 championship in his tenure at Iowa State was in the COVID year, and he hasn't yet won 10 games at Iowa State,
which is crazy.
So it's the ceiling seems to be fairly low, I guess, compared to some other schools in the conference. But if there was an opportunity to maybe take a leap, I think this would be the year that Iowa State could get it done. So I'm going to take them at 5 as well.
They're another team that if they showed up in Arlington in December, I'd be like, oh, yes, of course they did.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. All right, at number 6 now, Arizona's still on the board, so we're going to go with the Wildcats or the team that was number 7 in the Big 12 preseason poll, West Virginia.
Okay. Oh, God.
Is Arizona going to continue to tumble for you?
Yeah, and I don't feel good about it because I'm not overlooking. I mean, they may have the first team quarterback and the offensive player of the year and their quarterback and wide receiver. Very possible. But this is not your mama's, grandma's Big 12 anymore, right? Like, you do have to be able to do things like play defense now. And I just don't know that Arizona is going to be able to put enough. And I kind of fell in love with Neil Brown at Big 12 Media Days, despite my best efforts not to.
He's married, so.
Well, but again, these are just sports crushes. They don't really count.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm not trying to be a homewrecker. That ain't me. But I think that I should probably not talk. Anyways,
that's fine.
So I think Garrett Green is better than solid. I think that West Virginia is always going to be one of the top teams in the conference in the trenches, and that's where you win games. And they've consistently put out really good defensive and offensive linemen. They're always going to have a good running game. And Neil Brown is kind of got the, you think we're this? Okay, that's great. And not in the cheesy bulletin board material way coaches do, but in that kind of quiet, you don't think much of us. That's fine. Like, yeah, we saw it, but okay. Well, we're like, it's fine. And it was just like his press conference, to me, I thought he had the best coach press conference of any of them at Big 12 Media Days. And to me, that was the guy that I listened to, and I went, if I was on the fence, I would totally buy what this guy was selling. Like, if I was trying to choose my dark horse contender between, Iowa State or when I listened to Neil Brown, I went, this is the guy I would believe in right now. So I sorry, Arizona, you've tumbled once again against my better judgment.
I'm going to go with Arizona here at 6.
Okay, fair.
I think the talent ceiling, or the level of talent at the top end of the roster is better for Arizona than it is for West Virginia.
Okay.
And I'm not convinced that you can get away with the "they didn't see us coming" bit 2 seasons in a row if you're West Virginia.
Okay.
They got away with that spectacularly last year. They fooled a lot of folks. Nobody saw them coming. I don't know. It's the same thing with Kansas a couple of years ago, right? Once you start to get a little bit of momentum, once you start to have a little bit of success, people are going to pay attention to when you're showing up on their schedule. They're not going to get caught off guard by you 2 years in a row.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so I'm going to see. I want to see Neil Brown do it 2 years in a row. He got the extension. Everybody was talking about the extension this offseason. It was a 1-year extension. It lowered his buyout tremendously. And we're going to find out whether that works out in his favor or whether that works out in West Virginia's favor this year.
Bet on himself.
He did bet on himself. But I'm going with Arizona at 6. At number 7, Melissa, you have Arizona still on the board and UCF.
I love UCF. I think they're going to be really, really fun, but I am going to finally get Arizona off the board. It's just hard for me. Again, I don't know anything about what this conference is going to do. I can listen to all of those coaches and players talk and all of the pundits and talk to every reporter that covers this league and still not feel like I've learned anything because of how just obscene this conference could end up being this year. But I will get Arizona off the board, although that week 3 UCF game at TCU is to me probably the scariest of the first 4 games on the schedule for TCU. So, but yeah, at Arizona, you've paid your penance. It's time. Get off the board.
There you go. I'm proud of you for finally doing that for the Wildcats. West Virginia is going to take a little bit of a tumble on my side of the standings here. I'm going to go with UCF at 7. I really like what they did in the portal, getting KJ Jefferson in there.
Such a good Gus.
Gus Malzahn, I think that's a really, really fun fit. I think they're going to give a lot of defenses some problems this year. And I think that they can make some noise. I really do. Yeah. They've recruited incredibly well since joining the conference. Yeah. I believe they had either the top 2 or top 3 recruiting class in the conference last year. They've got another top 3 recruiting class so far for 2025. I like the program that Gus Malzahn is building.
I think I'm just still holding that epically stupid loss to Baylor against them from last year.
Dumb losses happen. People were hurt in that game. Like there's weird things happen. Weird things happen in the Big 12. It's Big 12 after dark. It's the classic.
Dumb.
Classic Big 12 After Dark. All right, going to number 8. We're going to shift a little bit here, and instead of 2 teams, I'm actually going to give you 3 teams.
Oh, no.
Melissa.
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot here. It's time. Well, no, we're not quite there yet.
We're there. Oh,
okay.
No, we're there. So for you have at the number 8 spot, UCF, Texas Tech, and TCU.
This was, Jamie, it's not very nice of you.
It's a game. It's fun. We're having fun.
I'm going to pick TCU.
Okay.
Because I can't be that much. Because I think TCU is going to beat UCF, and I think that's ultimately. I think these teams are very, very close. But I'm gonna say we're gonna win that game at home under the lights in a great, like the first time these 2 teams have ever played ever. So I'm gonna pick the Horned Frogs. I think, but those 2 teams could easily flip flop. So I'm not gonna pick UCF over TCU. I'm just not gonna do it. And the other team we don't even need to mention. So
that's fair. I'm interested to see this because obviously TCU plays UCF and Texas Tech this year.
Yeah.
UCF and Texas Tech don't play, so we won't have the little full triumvirate to understand who was fully better or if each team wins one and loses one, however that goes. I'm also going to go with TCU here at 8. If I had included them earlier, I would have probably put them at 7 ahead of Central Florida because I agree with you. I think TCU wins that football game in the end. But their TCU is at 8 for both of us. Probably going to hear that when I post these online.
Yeah.
From TCU fans, but I think our logic and our reasoning is sound.
Yeah, neither of us think that. I mean, I think TCU was picked too low, but I also think this is a massive, massive year for Sonny Dykes, and if he wants to be taken seriously as the type of coach that can build a legacy at the university he's at a Power 5 university, this is a season that he needs to get to 8 wins, and I think 8 wins gets TCU above UCF and Tech. And like I said, I think TCU beats Tech and UCF this year, and that's the reason why I picked them ahead. Although I think, I don't feel good about anything today. I don't like this game. I quit.
No, you can't quit because we're only halfway done. We've only done 8 of the 16
There's
teams.
So many.
There's so many.
About 24 teams in a league. No,
it's ridiculous. So, and I will say this because I agree with what you're saying, and I think the recipe is there for TCU to way outpace.
Oh yeah.
Where we have put them in these power rankings. At the level Sonny Dykes has been recruiting, both high school and in the portal, making the necessary change on the defensive side of the football by bringing in Andy Avalos. You have what you think will be a consistent starter for this season in Josh Hoover at quarterback. I really do think, I mean, I'll straight up say it. I took the over on TCU's win total when I was in Vegas last week for Big 12 Media Days, or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, which is it's set at 7.5. So I can fully and completely see them get to 8 wins, if not more.
But I also have no problem with people who don't believe in TCU. I get it. There's a lot to prove, and this is just a hugely important season for Sonny Dykes and TCU. So I would hope that they will rise up to that challenge, and that will inspire them to do great things. Because you're right, the recipe is there. They are more than capable of winning 8, 9 games, maybe 10, maybe. Yeah. I mean, they could get to Arlington, but there's a reason that they're being picked where they are, and it's earned, frankly.
Absolutely. All right, number 9, Melissa, you have to pick from UCF, Texas Tech, and Colorado.
UCF.
Okay.
It's KJ Jefferson is gonna freaking eat. He's gonna be so fun to watch 11 times this year.
Yes.
And he's gonna make, especially with how much the board was in love with him and wanted him in the portal, when he combines for 470 yards solo against TCU, and we win by 3. But he combines for, obscene. Yeah, it's gonna be like playing NCAA 25 defense. Like, you're not gonna stop him, but you just hope you outscore this team at the end.
I agree. I'm not looking forward to that game. That game's gonna be really stressful.
But also so excited.
Absolutely. All right, my 3 teams that I'm picking between at number 9 are West Virginia, Texas Tech, and Colorado. And the Mountaineers are going to continue to tumble because this is where I'm going to put
Shedeur Sanders.
No, Joey McGuire and Texas Tech are going to be here at number 9 for me. You can't see her, but my wife is just off camera holding a gun to my head.
Or is she holding double guns?
Double guns.
Okay.
No, but Texas Tech, I'm putting them at 9. I think year 2 of the Zach Kitley offense is going to be really fun. And like
But
so
who's
many other
playing quarterback?
teams, we have the same question about Baron Morton that we do with Arizona, with with Kansas, even with TCU to an extent. Will the quarterback stay healthy all year? If Baron Morton does, I think Texas Tech is going to be pretty successful in conference play, at least to this extent, where they finish in the top roughly half of the league.
I think that's fair. I think it's a fair assessment. And also, Skylar will divorce you.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is true. All right. You, Melissa, now have, I think, let's see, Texas Tech, Colorado, and Baylor are your next 3 for your 10th spot in the power rankings.
So
things are starting to get bleak.
Yeah. So putting your faith in a guy who had to go out of state to see a specialist just to see and change his throwing motion in order to operate at the position of quarterback, when Texas Tech has had such terrible injury misfortune at that position over the last several years, is the reason why I'm going to begrudgingly put Colorado above them.
Ooh.
And only because I think Colorado is like, I'm not going to pile on Shedeur Sanders in the way that a lot of people do, but I also just have been so unimpressed by the leadership shown by that quarterback, and as a program and team that went through some leadership questions. I think that is so important. And, Travis Hunter threw the offensive line under the bus in playing NCAA 25. And it's like, of course they can't block anybody. And the way that Shedeur Sanders spoke at Big 12 Media Days, like, if I was a teammate of theirs, I would be very, very, I would give up pretty easily if things started to not go our way. And that's what I think is going to happen to Colorado. I think that they will get some wins early, but I don't think they can hold up to the entire course of a season. But I do think Shedeur Sanders is electric and is probably a top 10 and potentially top 3 pick in the draft. And we saw last year he can put up a lot of points. Travis Hunter is one of the most exciting players in college football as well. And he seems like he's a really good kid, other than, crapping on his offensive line in a video game. But I think Sanders is more likely to stay healthy than Morton is, and so I think that they have the slight advantage there. So I'm gonna very begrudgingly pick Colorado next.
There you go. This is where I'm gonna slot West Virginia in at number 10 on my list here for reasons I've already kind of discussed. Moving on to number 11. Now you have, Melissa, Texas Tech, Baylor, and BYU.
Yeah, I am going to go with Texas Tech here because I do think Joey McGuire he is building a legitimate team out there. I think quarterback is going to be what keeps them from being a true contender this year, but I don't think that they're bad by any stretch.
Yeah. For me at 11, it's between Colorado, Baylor, and BYU. And hear me out.
Oh, no.
Hear me out.
You're going to do it, aren't you?
I'm gonna put Baylor at 11. I'm gonna put Baylor at 11. I think this is not because Gary Patterson is an assistant there. It's not because Jared Anderson is on the coaching staff there. This is because I think we've seen this offseason a legitimate philosophical shift in the way Dave Aranda is running this football team, and I think it's going to pay off in the long run. And it starts with the fact that he will be calling the defense once again this year.
That he will be fired by November? I mean...
Interim head coach Gary Patterson will be great.
It's going to happen.
But Dave Aranda's calling the defense. I think they actually have some pretty good talent. They got some good talent out of the transfer portal this offseason. Obviously, they've started paying players. He said so at Big 12 Media Days. That's not really going to help them with the high school class this year or whatever. But I think that he fully understands that this is a make or break year for him, and I think we see him light a fire under his program down there in Waco this year, to the tune of finishing 11th in the conference, right? So Probably not enough to save his job, but enough to give some people quite a handful Saturdays.
Well, that will be the interesting question: is how much does Dave Aranda have to win to save his job, or at least prevent him from getting fired mid-season? And
hey, I mean, if Baylor is this year's West Virginia, I think his job is pretty safe.
Yeah.
Frankly, make a bowl, and show that you've had a legitimate turnaround. I think that he gets at least another year.
Yeah. No.
But the fact that he doesn't have a year beyond this one, I think this is his final year of his contract.
Okay.
That changes the
so
situation
he's
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I maybe we research that here in a second, but I'm not totally sure. But moving on to number 12, Melissa, while you Google Dave Aranda's contract status, I'm just kind of reset for everybody to say where we are. Melissa's power rankings through the first 11. Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, Iowa State, West Virginia, Arizona, TCU at 8, Central Florida, Colorado, Texas Tech. My top 10 or my top 11 at this point: Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Utah, Kansas, Iowa State, Arizona, UCF, TCU at 8, Texas Tech, West Virginia, and Baylor at 11.
I'm going to go with...
12 for you.
12.
You have BYU,
Baylor,
Cincinnati, and Baylor.
I am going to go with Baylor, whose Dave Aranda's contract expires at the end of 2025.
Okay.
So he's in that perilous, we haven't extended you yet. Mm-hmm. So which is almost worse.
This is kind of the last window. The window is closing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, for all the Dave Aranda is, I think, a good coach. I think he's a little out of his depth as a head coach, but he's learned. And like you said, I think he took a lot of those lessons to heart and has absolutely done a lot of the things that need to happen. And Baylor, to their credit, has supported him in doing those things. Mm-hmm. So I do think they will be better. I still don't think that they are necessarily what I would call good, but they will be feisty and they will give teams some problems. And that's one for TCU not to overlook in Waco.
Fully agree with you there. 12 for me. I've got BYU, Cincinnati, and Colorado left on my board, and I think that this is where I put Colorado, just because I think that Colorado's better than BYU and better than Cincinnati. So for me, Colorado is sitting there at 12. 13 for you, Melissa. You've got BYU, Cincinnati, and Houston.
Okay, hear me out.
Don't say Cincinnati.
No, God, no.
Houston, Willie Fritz? Okay.
Houston,
I
Fritz.
can fully buy into that, yeah.
Yeah, I just think their talent is too short-handed for them to be a true contender, but they won't be the worst team in the league this year.
I agree with that. I think we're going to have a consensus number 16 team in the conference here when we get to the end of these rankings. I am not going to go with Houston here at 13. I'm picking between BYU, Cincy, and Houston, just like you, and I'm going to say BYU. I think Kalani Sitake has one of the coolest, funniest personalities of any of the Big 12 head coaches. He is so naive and innocent are the wrong words.
But also kind of the right words.
Like in that same vein, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll never forget his first Big 12 Media Days press conference last year at Jerry World, where he's like just asking people who wants to go to lunch after this, right? Like just, hey, showing up in his suit pants and tennis shoes and talking about eating lunch and just big smile on his face. And I really like the vibe from Kalani Sitake and BYU. They got erased pretty significantly week in, week out last year. I think they take a step forward this year, so I'm going to go with BYU.
I also
13.
I don't know if I could name 2 players on BYU's football team this year.
That's a fair point. We won't see BYU on TCU's schedule this year, so that's not a team that I've done a ton of research on, but we're also talking about 13, 14, 15, and 16 in the conference, so this is kind of where we are. Moving on to 14, you have BYU, Cincinnati, and Arizona State are the last 3 teams left.
I am going to go BYU for the same reasons basically that you do. I think Kalani Sitake is a good human being. Remains to be seen if he's a good Power 4 football coach, but I hope that he is.
I agree. I'm going with Houston here. I do think that they have a good top-end talent on the roster. The depth, like you said, is kind of questionable. Willie Fritz is a hell of a football coach, though, and I wouldn't doubt if Houston made a little bit of noise, beat someone that they shouldn't, that kind of thing. 15, we're down to the last two teams, Melissa, Cincinnati and Arizona State. Who are you putting at that penultimate, second-to-last spot in the conference?
This is where I'm probably going to break what you were hoping would happen. And
Oh, no.
I am going to pick Cincinnati above Arizona State, just for the reason that they have some familiarity with this league and their opponents in a way that Arizona State does not. I don't think they're good, and I think that they probably have the worst coach in the conference, or at least the least accomplished. But I am going to give them just the most modicum of benefit of the doubt and say that they will not finish last in the league.
I do think they're going to finish last in the league, which means that I'm going with Arizona State at 15. Kenny Dillingham is a really good offensive mind. He's struggled with attrition on that roster.
Yeah.
They are in a bad way when it comes to that roster and the development of talent, but I do think that just because of his coaching ability, Arizona State will be able to stave off finishing dead last in the conference in their first year in the Big 12. But you have them picked last. Give me your dead last pitch on Arizona State.
I agree with you. I think Dillingham is a really, really good coach. I don't. It's the same thing as BYU. I don't know that I can tell you like 3 players on that roster, although I do think they have some guys that can play a little bit. But at the end of the day, I just think I think it's not really having any experience in this league will not help them. And so that's where I just barely edge out Cincinnati.
Yeah, with Cincinnati, I didn't see the vision when they hired Scott Satterfield.
Yeah.
I didn't see the vision in year 1 of Scott Satterfield.
Sure.
I'm not sure that there is a vision for year 2
also very likely
of the Scott Satterfield era. They didn't do much in the portal. They didn't do much by way of high school recruiting. I just don't know what
and their
the
best
long
player
term
might miss the season.
might be out for the year.
Yeah.
And so I just don't know what the plan is for Cincinnati football. I really don't. And that's disappointing because I know that fan base deserves a really good football team. That fan base is incredible. And TCU travels up there this year. But I just don't know. I don't know what the vision is. And so if I don't know what the vision is, I can't buy in.
Yeah.
I
don't feel good about any of these last 8 picks, but also
once we got past TCU, you're just like, I don't know, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, I just don't know, it's all crapshoot. But I know that I'm also not too worried about being wrong about the bottom third of the league. What will be really interesting is of those bottom 4 teams, which one of them doesn't finish in the bottom 4, right? Because one of them is going to surprise people. That's how it always works. So that's what I'll be interested to see is which of those teams is able to kind of pull something together and be quote unquote a surprise.
It'll be interesting.
And maybe win 5 games instead of 4.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where these teams actually play out. We'll obviously revisit these power rankings at the end of the season, much to our chagrin at that point, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We'll talk about all the ways we were wrong and hopefully some of the ways we were right. Maybe we'll be wrong in a good way and TCU will win the league this year. That'd be pretty great.
That would be, I would love to be so wrong in that.
Absolutely.
TCU win the league. That'd make me so happy.
So we'll post all this on socials and we'll kind of keep track of where we are throughout the year with these Big 12 power ranking predictions.
Yeah.
Melissa, let's move on very quickly because I do want to touch on Bill Mosiello stuff before we get into the conversation I had with Mark Campbell. I wrote a long article.
Yeah, it's a lot.
A very long article, 2,500 words on Horned Frog Blitz this week about a conversation that I had with Bill Mosiello. And I'll be honest with you, when I sat down to start writing this article and I was listening back to the 50-something minute recording that was our conversation, really I had to kind of just pull back for a second and think about the big picture of what he was essentially telling me in this conversation because we covered a lot of ground. We talked about, we walked into the office. He comes in. He's a bundle of energy. If you've ever met Bill Mosiello, the guy is high energy. But he comes in. He's got his arms full of stuff. He's just been on the recruiting trail for like 16 days in a row out in Arizona. This is the middle of July. He like comes in, sees me, Plunkett, let's go. And we just like walk right back to the office. He plops all this stuff down, and like it didn't register with me. Like it was just such an odd moment to have sat in that office pretty frequently over the last quite a few years. Like had conversations with Bill Mosiello in that place before, and it was completely empty because it was his office, and then it wasn't for 2 years, and now it is again, and he's just getting moved back in. And that scene for our conversation was really interesting, and just the way that he talked about his love for Ohio State and his love for the players at Ohio State and the challenges that he faced up there. I don't think I ever fully realized that for the 2 years he was in Columbus, his family never moved up there with him. And because of the housing market in Columbus, they had a great house out in Aledo. He had an apartment in Columbus as the head coach of Ohio State baseball, with his wife living states away, his kids living states away. And if you know anything about Bill Mosiello, you know how family-oriented he is and how that is such a huge piece of the style of culture that he wants his baseball program to have. And I'm sure he'll do this again now that he's back at TCU, hosts players at his house all the time.
Yeah.
To cook out, to share a meal with, just to spend time with outside of baseball, and really kind of just build the foundation of relationship that he values so much with his players. And he's saying in 2 years, he didn't have a single player over to have a meal with him.
Wow.
Because he's living in an apartment. He can't host 15, 20 people in a 2-bedroom apartment or a 3-bedroom apartment, whatever it is. And so I think for him, he really felt like from the get-go, his time at Ohio State was kind of hampered because he wasn't able to fully live out the vision that he had for being a head coach. I fully understand not being able to fully have that vision become a reality for something that you really, really want. And I can understand how if you don't have something that is such a cornerstone of your being, your family, there with you, how that would present a massive challenge. And so regardless of the success that they were having at Ohio State, he won 60 games in 2 years. He got him back to the Big Ten tournament for the first time since 2019. He had jumped their recruiting class from outside of the top 100 in 2022 to 38 in 23 and 46 in 24. Like the recruiting was in the right direction. They were winning more baseball games. They were getting closer and closer to postseason play. So he's having all of the on-field success you'd expect him to have, but he's missing this huge chunk of his life and this huge chunk of his vision for how he wanted to really run a program. Plus, and Kirk Saarloos has said this as well, the shift from assistant coach to head coach is one that comes with so much other BS that a lot of coaches just don't want to deal with or prefer less than actually being a coach. Meeting with donors, doing all of the fundraising stuff, all of the head coaching responsibilities, constantly putting out fires, constantly thinking about the roster, doing all of these things that keep you out of your hands-on coaching.
Well,
I think that's a huge thing that he missed as well.
Well, I think especially, too, when you consider having to do it in the Big Ten, where baseball is not given the attention and resources, and at a school like Ohio State, where, you talk about fighting for resources and opportunities and NIL dollars at TCU, it's probably 10 times harder at Ohio State because the Big Ten has just never really valued, or not recently valued, baseball as it's probably not their third sport or second sport like it might be at other leagues. So I think that the attention taken away from the part of the job he loves to do the part of the job that nobody really loves is probably a significant impact on his day-to-day well-being as well.
Yeah, and I think that was definitely part of it. And I think that at the end of the day, one of the things that I thought he said that was really profound was because I asked him, I said, what's the biggest thing that you learned in your 2 years at Ohio State? And this is a guy, by the way, who He was a minor league manager in the Angels organization and the Yankees organization. He's the hitting coach at University of Tennessee, right? He's coached guys like Mike Trout and Todd Helton, who was just inducted into the Hall of Fame. Like, this guy's got, if you've got a resume, Bill Mosiello's got the resume. And so he's learned things at every stop that he's been on. But I asked him, I was like, what's the biggest thing you learned at Ohio State? And he said just how important my relationship is with my players. And for all of the reasons we talked about, the house, the other duties of being a head coach, I don't think he ever really felt like he got those relationships off the ground like he wanted to. And then the news broke of him coming back to TCU, and he never even got to say goodbye. And so I think that he got a taste of being a head coach. He learned a lot. He never stopped loving TCU. And when the opportunity arose in the middle of June and Kirk Saarloos called him and said, I need you. I want you back here. He knew that was going to be the right move for him to make for himself and for his family. And I understand the disappointment and the confusion from Ohio State fans. But another thing that he said that I thought was really powerful was, he goes, I understand why they're upset and I understand their frustration from the Ohio State point of view, but I wish that people would frame this move a little differently and talk less about me leaving Ohio State and more about how great the place I'm going is. He goes, it says a lot about TCU that a head coach would leave their head coaching job to come be an assistant coach here. And by the way, he didn't say this part. This is me narrating into the story now. That's the second time in a row that's happened, right? Because TJ Bruce was the head coach at Nevada and came to be an assistant coach here, and now Bill Mosiello is doing the same thing. That says a lot about TCU baseball.
It really does.
It says a lot about Kirk Saarloos and the culture that's been built here over a long course of time.
Well, and with some of the changes that are coming to college baseball and the scholarship limits being, potentially lifted, looking very, very likely. If you're all of a sudden able to, have 32 or 35 full scholarships in that baseball program, the biggest TCU's been playing with one hand tied behind its back when it comes to what they can offer students, and they do a really good job of supplementing where they can, I'm sure, but at the end of the day, a TCU education with room and board is over $80,000 now. It will be more expensive than Harvard when school starts in the fall, which is insane to think about. And oftentimes you are asking players to foot a large portion of that bill. And so it does eliminate a big part of your recruiting pool. It probably also impacts kids that are drafted in the third or fourth or fifth rounds decision on whether they're going to end up playing college baseball or going to chase the money in the pros. Well, that changes. You have a couple of really, really proven elite recruiters on that staff, and now you can say you can come play baseball here for free. I mean, when you consider what TCU has accomplished up to this point, when you give them access to those kind of resources, it could really just vault them into the next level. Yeah,
that didn't make it into the story because it was already 2,500 words long. But Mosiello and I did talk about that, and he was very excited about the recruiting pitch that he was going to be able to make to kids that TCU's never been able to talk to before.
JB, if we don't sign a kid that hits 20 home runs, I'm going to cry at some point.
I mean, I'm not going to make any promises because that's not my style, but I do know that with Bill Mosiello back, with Kirk Saarloos entering year 4, and with, honestly, truly, I believe this, one of the best recruiters in the country, and John DeLora on the staff, they're going to put a pretty dang good recruiting class together. We haven't even talked much about the last recruiting class that they just got, but Sawyer Stroh-Snyder, watch out.
Yeah.
That's my one hint for this incoming recruiting class. Sawyer Stroh-Snyder, watch out. The kid is a stud, an absolute stud.
And he's bringing some of his friends that what TCU didn't lose to the draft is pretty unbelievable.
Yes. I did a little bit of write-up on that for Horned Frog Blitz as well. You can go read that over there. But, Melissa, we've already blown our timeline out of the water. But we're still going to jump into this interview with Mark Campbell. I sat down with Mark Campbell a couple of weeks ago to just talk about his lessons learned from Season 1 at TCU and strategies for continuing the vision in year 2. We talked about the importance of getting Sedona Prince back and the depth on this roster. Melissa, let me tell you right now, he loves the depth he has accumulated on this roster for women's basketball, and I think TCU fans are going to really love it as well. So let's go ahead and jump into that conversation right now. It's been a long road for you, and I think that the layers to the story make it even more impressive. Not only just getting here in the spring when you did with a shortened recruiting cycle to bring in the portal players that you did and to field a team that was capable of competing with anybody they stepped on the court with. You suffered the injuries that you suffered, and obviously the results didn't always bear out the way you wanted them to. But when you look back at the first year here, what is your biggest takeaway from year one at TCU?
Yeah, each year you kind of reflect back going, did we max out that group's talent, and did we max out their ability? And obviously when we were healthy, that was the best start in school history. I think we started 14-0, and that group was special. All the pieces of the puzzle kind of fit together, and then the injury bug hit us during that 10-day window. And so you had to reshuffle the deck and reshuffle roles. And that new group, though, I can say with confidence that group maxed out their abilities and figured out how to play together and figured out how to be a tough out and how to win ball games. And so looking back, you couldn't have asked for anything more from that group of kids. Super proud of our staff. So year one is laying the foundation for year two. And this is my fourth major rebuilding job that I got to be a part of. In the three previous ones, we never got 500 or above, and that was at Oregon State, Oregon, Sac State. And so to go get to 21 wins in year one is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best first year for me that I've ever been a part of. And so that just sets you up to be so much farther ahead for year two. And so program, we couldn't be in a better spot. And just really, really proud of those group of kids and what they accomplished last season.
No, we'll talk about year two in a moment, but I think one of the bigger moments this offseason was the decision for Sedona Prince to come back for her sixth season, get that medical waiver, and be eligible to play. What were those conversations like with her? Did she come to you and express an interest in coming back? And how did you guys work to make that happen?
Yeah. Sedona, since she was a kid, her dream's to be a top 5 draft pick. That's been her kind of childhood dream. And before she had all the injuries in her career, she was on track to be the number 1 pick. I mean, that was the consensus number 1 player in the country out of high school. And so what she did last year, she's getting back closer to the old Sedona Prince. That was the best player in the country. And so I think she tasted success for the first time in college basketball at that level, had a role that she's never had before. And like anything in life, when you start tasting success, it makes you hungry. Mm-hmm. And so there really wasn't a conversation about going pro or coming back to college. She's chasing her childhood dream, and she wants to max out her talent and make sure she's ready and healthy mentally, physically, before she tackles the pro world. And so Sedona's unique. She's a really mature kid, has a really unique, special mind, and she has a good grasp and understanding of the business of the pro world, where she's at, and she wanted to run it back with us.
There's a correlation, I think, between kids coming to taking an extra year and coming back and then having success at the next level. For her, beyond just health, what do you think it is that she needs to do to take that next step and then realize that professional dream?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to that. Number one is truly carrying a load on a good team. Last year we surprised everybody, and Sedona surprised everybody.
Yeah.
Now you're not. Sedona is people know what she's capable of, and so now can you do that on a really good team when people have a bullseye on you? And that's what pros do, is they deliver night in and night out when the other team is doing everything they can to slow you down. And so that's one area. I think Sedona is such a unique, versatile player. Shooting at the pro level, the WNBA, is so important. And so helping her make a big jump in her 3-point ability to be a true versatile playmaking forward. And then we're tinkering around and using her in the pick and rolls and allowing her to bring the ball up in transition, and helping her grow in some of the areas that she's capable of doing that but has never been utilized in that way. And so it's been fun off season trying to figure out how do we max out Sedona Prince's gifts over the next 9 months.
When you have talent like Sedona and Madison Connor, and then you hit the portal and you bring in Maddie Scher, Haley Van Lith, Taylor Bigsby, Donovan Hunt. I mean, the list of portal players that you brought in this summer is really impressive. What do you do as the head coach to manage all of that talent, find a rotation that works for everyone, and then at the end of the day, do the most important thing and put wins on the board?
Yeah, there's moving parts to this thing, and so fortunately, getting to be a part of that Oregon run where you had the number 1 team in the country and a Final Four team, and you had multiple top 10 draft picks, and navigating all of this, we've been down this road. And so it starts in the summertime, and to get chemistry right, and start getting the chemistry right on and off the court, and then start getting your system in, and really getting to know these kids. I think our staff does an amazing job of getting to know each player, because you do got to help them figure out their role within a team. When you have this much talent, which we have a really special group, you got to connect with each one of them and understand their goals and dreams, and walk through this journey with them. And so over the course of the season, which we saw last year, where you had, injuries that unfolded unforeseen that quickly, you need depth to get to a Final Four, to win a Big 12 championship, to compete at the highest level. You need depth. And so we have it this year, and you just got to make sure this team is all in on that. And so I also love following Olympic years, because you have the 12 best women's basketball players in our country that have to come together quickly for one common goal. And so watching them set their egos aside for the mission of winning a gold medal for our country, I think our team can learn from that and observe that, of making sure we're all in and playing together for one common goal.
And it will certainly help your cause too that you have an Olympian on the roster who's going to play in the 3-on-3 Olympics tournament, and Haley Van Lith. Can you tell me why you made it a priority to pursue her in the portal, and what she's brought to the program?
I've known Haley since she's like 15 years old. She's had an incredible journey in her basketball career, from a tiny little community up there in Eastern Washington. And so it's been fun to follow her journey and to get to coach her on her last season. She is one of the hardest workers, most competitive players that I've ever been around. Since the day she stepped foot on campus, she's been doing double days, and often 3-a-days, where she will come in and get a morning workout, and then come back and get her lift in, and then come in and get her shooting in. And she's been training in preparation of making the USA team, and then now that she made it, in preparation to get ready for the games. And so just her focus, her competitive spirit, her maturity, her DNA. When she was in the portal, obviously we were all in on trying to add a veteran savvy guard like that. And so she's here to compete at the highest level, to maximize her last year of college basketball, and to help take this program to a place it's never been before.
I know she was kind of the primary creator and scorer for Louisville. At LSU, her role shifted a little bit to be more of a true point guard distributor. How do you see her role bearing out here at TCU? Is it more the scorer, or more the distributor, or maybe a blend of the two?
Yeah, I think Haley's a heck of a basketball player, and I think we have a group of kids that are really good basketball players that you don't pigeonhole into one position. Haley's a true combo guard. Uh, she's carried the heavy scoring load. Like at Louisville, she averaged 20 a game on an Elite Eight team, so she's done that. And then she filled a role at LSU on a really good team, and so I think Haley is a true combo guard. She can score, she can facilitate, but she's a playmaker. She's an aggressive playmaker that's coming after you. And so I think she's going to fit our spread pick and roll, our 4-out system, and with shooters all around, and the court's going to be spaced. Haley's going to be a problem this upcoming season.
Not to mention, you bring back one of the most prolific three-point shooters in college basketball last season. You bring back Sedona. You add more shooters in the portal as well. You mentioned the 4-out, and I know that was the initial kind of offensive scheme. You adjusted to a 5-out after some of the injuries came. Do you see that being more of a dependent on who's on the court, or are you going to stick to the 4-out, or is this really just what's your offensive approach coming into this year?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, in life, man, adversity hits, and there's blessings in adversity if you can find them. And so getting to dip your toe into the 5-out offense and learn that is going to pay off for next year. And so our scheme next year want to blend the 4-out and 5-out together. I think this is the most playmakers on one team that I've ever been a part of. You just got so many talented kids that can attack and create and play in pick and rolls and create havoc. And so because of that, Jaden Owens kind of dominated the pick and roll situation for us because she's such an elite playmaker. But now you got multiple pick and roll guards and multiple playmakers. And so we're really trying to open this up. We want to play at a much higher pace and tempo with the depth that we have. Studying the WNBA and the pro level with the 4-out and 5-out, and Sedona's shooting ability, Aaliyah's shooting ability, Natalie's shooting ability. You're going to open up the paint for kids like Haley and Connor and Sheer and Donovan Hunter and KG and Una, Agnes. I mean, the list goes on of playmakers. So we want to open the court, play at a much higher tempo, push hard on makes and misses, and want to be one of the best transition teams in the country. And then once you get to the half court, let's play 4-out, 5-out pick and roll.
You talk about being in transition. Frog fans know good transition basketball because of the men's side. Jamie Dixon's squad was the leading transition team in the country last season. Have you guys shared any thoughts on what it means to be a good transition basketball program?
Yeah, Jamie and his staff have been awesome to us, and I sit in on their practices, and I'll pop over to their offices, pick their brain on some of their principles and drills. And obviously, being great in transition, you got to be an elite rebounding team, and also to be good in transition, you got to get into passing lanes and cause havoc defensively. And so all of those things work together. But I just know with the depth that we have, we're going to press and pressure. And really push the ball at a level that we weren't able to do a year ago.
And you also added depth in the front court as well. You mentioned a couple of folks already, but how important was that as a priority this offseason to not only get deeper, but get bigger a little bit as well?
Oh, well, we got 4 good ones. Obviously, Sedona is maybe the most unique center in college basketball this upcoming year. I think she's the most versatile center in the country. And then you have some great kids. Aaliyah is not a natural 5, but became a really good 5 in our 5-out and became a mismatch problem. And so I love Aaliyah because you can use her as a 4 and a 5. And then Deja's back, and she got some experience before she got injured last year, which is going to pay off for us this year. And then Natalie came to us from South Dakota and is a true stretch 5. Strong and athletic, can defend, but can really, really shoot it. So fits perfectly. And then Deja is a physical, strong, low post player that's an old veteran. And so we got a great nucleus of kids that we can put in at the 5 position. And kind of each one of them does something different. And so In the Big 12, one thing I learned is there's a wide range of playing styles, and so you got to be prepared for all of it.
Would you ever envision, especially against maybe some bigger front courts, playing a couple of your bigs together simultaneously?
Oh, you can go big.
Yeah.
If you slide Aaliyah, over there to the 3, and you put Nat at the 4 and Sedona at the 5, that's a big, strong, physical lineup that can rebound and bang, but you still can really shoot that thing. I mean, Aaliyah can shoot it, and Nat can shoot it, and Sedona can really shoot it. So you don't lose your shooting, but you are strong and physical. And so it's been fun. Our staff's had a lot of meetings about how to utilize this talent best, and summer workouts are going great, but I'm chomping at the bit for October to get here.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine. You're so excited, and you guys have been probably getting really creative in those coaches' meetings about how you can utilize everybody. But at the end of the day, it comes down to getting into the season and putting a good product out there on the court. How confident are you right now in this bunch's ability to go out and produce come the season?
Yeah, this group has the ability to compete at the highest level, to compete against anybody in the country. There's a lot of work between now and November that has to be done on and off the court for that to come to fruition.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so fun, is taking the new squad and, identifying your leaders of this group, and identifying the different gifts that each of them have, and figuring out how to be a collective unit. And so on paper, the talent that's here, the depth that is here, it's a group that can play at the highest level.
What are your expectations for season 2 at TCU?
Yeah, it's same as season 1 is, okay, here's the hand you're dealt. Can you max out their talents? Can you max out their gifts? And that truly is. And what does that mean? I don't put a magical number out there. But as a staff, you're just locked in our film sessions right now, and putting together our offense and defensive scheme is, what do we got to do to make sure we max out this group? And all I know is this group can play at the highest level. And so you have long-term goals to compete for a Big 12 title. If you're doing that, you're one of the best teams in the country. To try and earn a top 16 seed in women's basketball, you get 2 home games, which is
huge,
just an incredible advantage, and the Final Four is in Tampa. And so there's things and so many steps that have to unfold. At the same time, you need a roadmap. You have to have a sense of where we're going and what we got to do to get there. And so, but you can't skip any steps. And right now, this is just the summer aspect of it. And this is the very first part. And this is where you got to lay the foundation that you can build upon.
You talk about benchmarks on your roadmap. It reminds me of this visual that Gary Patterson used to have when he was here. He had this pyramid up in the team room, and it had sections, and it talked about summer workouts and non-conference games and win your home games and win the Big 12. And so you kind of fill out and need color in the pyramid based on how well the team was doing at any given time. For you, when you think about the benchmarks on this roadmap, what are some things along the way that need to be addressed and taken care of in order to accomplish those goals?
Yeah, well, with today's college athletics and the portal, the most important is assembling a great group of young women that are all in and great team players. And that's the very first step. And I think that's our secret sauce as a staff, is identifying and attracting the right group of kids. Then once you get them here, it's how do you allow them to naturally create and form this team's identity? And that is, you can't rush that process. It has to happen over months of time spent together. It happens in competitive environments, in fun environments, in team meals, in hanging out at the pool. And so that's the phase we're in right now. And then you'll get into fall, and training camp will start. And that's when this group gets to truly compete. And I talk about, the immature kid talks about competing against each other, and it's really completing each other. Each one of these kids has to be great at what they do and be great at who they are. It's my job and our staff's job to put that puzzle together. And so we'll harp on that in the fall, but we're not competing against each other. We're completing each other. And that's when you get the whole thing to come to fruition.
So you've got 13 scholarship players. I noticed there's still one of the walk-ons from this past season that's going to be back with you guys again. Do you anticipate filling out those last 2 scholarship spots? And I also noticed, and you mentioned this last year when we were talking about the high school recruitment portion of all of this, you spent a year getting to know the juniors in the area and really focusing on that class. But do you anticipate filling those last 2 scholarships? And then how's high school recruiting going at this point?
Yeah, those scholarships are gold, and recruiting is 12 months a year. And so we're still actively studying the market and seeing what's out there. Ella, you mentioned, is back, and just so thankful for Ella and all those young ladies that helped us a year ago, and really saved us so we could continue with the season. Ella's someone that wants to chase basketball, and she absolutely loves it. And is in here spending extra time working on her craft. It's really neat for Ella because that group got thrust into an environment where we're mid-season. Now Ella's getting to start on a level playing field from day one with strength and conditioning, with individual workouts. And so it's been fun to watch her grow and see her confidence is at a whole different level. And so she's been awesome. And then those other scholarships, we're actively pursuing some options still that are out there. And then high school recruiting is our first true high school class will sign in November, and I would say we're in great position in regards to who we've identified that fit us, that are elite level talent. Recruiting now is a tricky balance between portal players and high school players, and it's a fine line of how many portal kids and high school kids. For us as a program to get this thing out of the hole and to get it up and running, you had to get old quick, and you had to get proven major college talent in here. And we were able to do that. And so now you kind of get to start backfilling with high school kids. And so excited where we're at. I can't talk about any current recruits, but we're in the mix with some very talented young ladies.
And you also went out and got a couple girls with multiple years of eligibility from the portal with Taylor and Donovan specifically. What do they bring to the team, not only this season, but in the coming years?
Yeah, great question. Donovan Hunter was a starting point guard at Oregon State on an Elite 8 team. Game away from the Final Four, started every game for him. And so you got a 6-foot point guard with 3 years to play that is just an incredible person, first of all, and one of the best point guards in college basketball. And to have her for 3 years and to build around her and pour into her and help her with her journey, that was a huge addition. Taylor Bigby from USC played about 25 minutes a game on a top 10 team in the country. And to have Taylor for 2 years and as a 6'1" wing that can kind of play 1 through 3. She has pro talent and versatility. And so to have her for the next 2 years is really exciting. And then Natalie from South Dakota, to have her for 2 years. She's going to have a huge role this year. And then obviously Sedona's graduating. And so to have someone in the program already is huge. So to have those 3 kids that you're going to have back for multiple years, as you dive into this portal, you're trying to find those kids so that you have some continuity within your program.
Just 2 more questions for you here before we wrap up. And the first one is schedule related. I know that the men's side went to a 20-game conference schedule this year. It looks like the women's side is still at 18. Is there
plans maybe to move to 20? Would you prefer that with 16 teams in the conference now?
Yeah, it was a vote.
Okay.
I know I voted for the 20 game schedule. And so, but I'm good with whatever. I support the majority, but I would love it to get to 20, to have 20 built-in BCS Power Four games.
Mm-hmm.
I think is a win for our league. But going to take the hand we're dealt and make the best of it. Hopefully, we'll get to 20.
Mm-hmm.
I just think with the net rankings and how all of those things work, the more Power Four games you can play, the better for the whole league.
Yeah. And are you trying to offset the 18 versus 20 in the non-conference schedule leading into Big 12 play?
Yeah, we it hasn't been released yet. It will slowly start leaking out, but we have some marquee showdowns in our non-conference schedule that we're going to play against some of the best teams in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so keep your eyes out for that. And it'll be really fun and exciting when that news becomes official.
Awesome. Coach, I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And that's my conversation with Mark Campbell. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Frogs Insider. We have gone way over our allotted amount of time that we give ourselves every week. So we're just going to wrap it up right there. Melissa, anything else, or we're up fully out of here?
Hey, you know what? We are good at, by the time that you listen to this, we will be just a little over a week away from fall camp starting. So that will be the focus of our next episode, I'm sure. I cannot wait to see how the Horned Frogs look and to be down there at the practice field checking it out.
It's going to be great. We might do our big questions episode like we did. That was a really popular episode last year. So we're going to take fan questions and thoughts and maybe even some predictions from you guys for next week's episode.
Thank you to all you guys for listening. Thank you, as always, to Dave Campbell's Texas Football, the Campbell's Public Football Podcast Network, and, of course, our incredible sponsor, Hell's Half Acre Stadium Goods. New drop coming for the fall. Lots of cool stuff. You mentioned the rope hats on sale, but make sure that you are subscribed to their newsletter and you're getting their marketing emails because there are always cool things coming into your inbox if you check them out.
Absolutely. And for Melissa Treewasser, I'm Jamie Plunkett. We'll talk to you next time. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.